Thanks for coming in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Dorothy Smith, originally from Pallybanks, but living in Ross River. I'm a Wolf clan, and this is my sister, Nzi. Could you hear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Today she's going to talk a little on residential school, what happened when all the kids left the community in Pelly Lakes. We came with 2 float planes. One went to Watson Lake and the other one went to Whitehorse. So we didn't know at the time that the students went to Watson Lake, but I went to Whitehorse Indian Baptist Mission School. So me wouldn't die.
Yeah.
The Waja then just
First time in an agent Kitty he then talk it to he think Adam get down here. Full time could I let it down get that basket school with it. Get down here and that he cook get down get school soon as
Senayara.
everybody get down the hand at her. I think I can take it, they put you get down and hold it a lot.
Don't lie to Casti, Senay.
Kids go, get down and shake when they go. Take out that village and the ear and wash it. Show me how to get down and get shaken.
Mommy.
Mom too.
Nanny.
Daddy said they never die. Daddy said they never die. Sangara then I fix anything and said I said, Mom.
Oh.
Cola is the other nasty.
Oh, okay. Cola. Do you want me to interpret what she said?
Sure.
It's on now?
Yeah.
Okay. She said that she remembered that Indian Affairs, or Aboriginal Affairs as they're called now, came to the community in the spring and told everybody that the children are going to go to school in the fall and that they're going to come back and they're going to pick up the kids. So they knew that, and in the fall everybody came back to the community so that the kids could go to school. And she said that all of the children were put with a name tag with a string around the neck with a name tag on top to say what child is who. And I asked her, what about me? She said, you too. And I can't remember that. I couldn't remember that happening. And anyways, after the day that the children all went to school, she said it was really lonely. And she said, in the evening, I said, what was it like in the evening? And she said, a lot of people were crying because it was, they missed the children already. And I said, what about Mom? She said, yeah, Mom did. Mom cried. And I said, what about you? She said, no. And Dad told Mom, he said, you don't have to cry. They never die. They're going to come back. So Mom was crying. So that's what happened when the children all went to school. There was a lot of tears from the parents. And Kola. The day that I went to school, I can only remember us getting into the float plane at close to the trading post. and there was 2 float plane, and some kids got into each one of them, and I didn't know at the time that one of them was going to go to Watson Lake, and I just remember us landing at Jackfish Lake, which is just about 5 miles or 6 kilometers away from Ross River, and we landed there. No, when we left Pelly Lakes, all the kids were crying. I can remember that, and everybody was crying, and they cried until they couldn't cry anymore. And then when we landed in Ross River, we all went. They put us in a truck in the back of an old army truck, and there was a canvas on top, and they had blankets or quilts to cover us when we're going. And we went down to Ross River, and we picked up more children from Ross River, and when we left there, I think it was in the afternoon sometime, and when we left Ross, there was a lot of kids that were crying and crying and crying, and they cried until they couldn't cry anymore, and they fell asleep. And then whenever they woke up one by one, and they start crying again, and it was like that all the way from Ross River to Whitehorse. And I remember we stopped somewhere along the way, and we ate something, and I can't remember what it was, but all I could remember mostly was just kids crying. And when we got to Whitehorse, it was late, and coming down the hill, the road used to be behind Elks Hall, down that way from the airport, down that hill, and residential school was that whole block where Elks Hall is to the other end, about 2 blocks. It was all old army building. And we got in there, and I don't even remember if they gave us anything to eat that night or anything, but I can remember that they took us all into the bathroom, and they made a shower, and they deloused everybody with some kind of powder. It was all over your hair, and they powdered, and they cut everybody's hair. And I had long hair, but they cut it really short. And so that was the first day of school. And we all went to school, and everybody, the kids that have gone to school before us, they said you can't speak your language. So we were mostly quiet the whole year until we learned how to speak English. And it took us about 1 year, and we know how to speak English. But at the same time, my cousin and I, Effie and I, we slept close together on bunk beds, and we used to stay up late at night, and we tell story about where we've gone to that summer, where we hunted, where we got the moose, and all of that. We tell story to each other in our language, and then we tell our legends too, so we don't forget. We say it in Casca, and we talk back and forth. And so I never did forget my language. I spoke my language fluently. I still do today. And we had to learn. We had no choice but to learn how to speak English. So that's all of the school. And they separated us. The boys, my brothers, had to go on the other side and separate from us. We never, I guess there was something that we lost. It was the family unit. Even to this day, we didn't really get together like family. So we lost that.
Mm-hmm. How do you think we can get that back?
We have to get the elders to teach us that. And we have to start teaching the way our elders taught us, go to the schools. That's why I'm doing it. I'm going to the school and teaching kids about different things. And I think it's really important that's why I'm going into the schools and even to RCMP and the mining people. I'm going in there and telling them about our land, how precious our land is to us, and teaching them that we're not like non-native, and non-native is satisfied to have a block and call it their own, and nobody can go on there, they can't trespass. We're not like that. We have a different, we share our land, and our land is really important to us. And that's why when we were talking about land claims with our elders, they told us you can't sell the land. God, or Medigurit, which they call it in Casca, Medigurit is God, nobody above him. John Dixon, our grandpa, used to tell us, you can't, that's who you pray to. He said, you talk to him all the time. And he's the one that gives us our land to survive off of. And he said, our land is going to be more important. Don't settle land claims and take money from white man, because you can't eat the money. You have to live on the land to survive. That's where you're going to get your animals. That's where you're going to enjoy yourself, have peace and quiet when you're out on the land. And that's why I think it's really important now that we're getting older. We have to start passing down all these things that our elders taught us, so that the kids can once more enjoy all the land that our people have lived on for thousands of years, and that the kids will learn their culture, their values, and the respect. Nowadays, because of the residential school, I think a lot of us have forgotten what it was like to respect each other as people, and to respect our elders, and to look after our elders. So that's why it's so important to go and teach our young people and our non-native also, that we respect them, but we're different. We're not the same culture. We don't have the same values as them. We have different values. We value the land which we're from. And so we have to teach them also, so that they will know. Because when they did the land claim settlement, they didn't discuss how valuable the land was. And now, when they settle land claims, there's only little pieces of land that they set aside for the First Nation, and in each community there's just little pieces of land. And I don't know if they're satisfied with what they got, but we certainly cannot go and accept small pieces like them. Our elders told us not to, so we're listening to them, and we're going to settle on our own terms, not anybody else's, because our way is different than others, our other First Nation.
Yeah, it's really hard to, because there was a lot of overlap within the First Nations too, right? And we didn't just stay in one spot, we moved around as a people, and we didn't recognize those borders.
Yes.
And it's kind of like dividing the First Nations, so they're saying this is my land, but our land, right? It kind of gets away from that.
Yes, that's another thing too. We had a General Assembly at Simpson Lake in 1987 or something like that, and we were talking about the land, how the Casca people are from Ross River down to Fort Ware, and we were talking about it, and I was telling them that there's a border, the BC border, and the Yukon and NWT border, which borders our land up in Ross River. And they said, it's not our doing, it's the government's doing. And they call that rope across the land, you know, the DCT, they call it. And they said, that's not ours, so we don't want to recognize it. We're all of Casca's land, you know. There's no such thing as BC and Yukon, because Peter Stone, who is our cousin that lives around Muncho Lake, invite us a lot to go and hunt down in the park, and we haven't taken that offer, but he said you can come down anytime and hunt down there if you want, because it's your land too. You don't have to ask anybody permission to go and hunt down there. And we told him the same too, come and hunt up there, you know, and sometimes when they go up to the border, they could hunt up there too, because we allow them, that's our land, and our people travel up that way. But the NWT border and BC border does not exist in the Casca way, so we don't recognize overlap. There's no such thing as overlap. I know that different communities like Mayo, like Carmacks, like Teslin, they're going to talk about overlap, but we have yet to decide how we're going to address that. There's no such thing in Indian country as overlap. That's just another word of the government people that is forced upon the Indian people. Eh?
Yeah.
They said just do away with that BC border. It's not our doing.
Yeah.
So that's the way they look at it.
Yeah, everything about the land, they had their actual names. The mountains were named different than, and British Columbia wasn't British Columbia, right?
Yeah, it wasn't.
The land, the water, and it was just.
Yeah, every mountain has a name. Every river and lake, and they all have names, Dena names, and I think that's what the people are trying to do now. They're going to put back the original names, like Ross River is Tulitlini, and that's what it was called in the past. It was not Ross River. It was Tulitlini, water coming together, because there's a Pelly and the Ross, and they meet right in Ross River. So that's the name. And Pelly Lake has its own name, and Francis Lake. Those are all the Campbell, when he came through first, he named all those lakes and places by people that he knew. So it wasn't native names.
Yes. Even in like Queen Charlotte Islands, they used to call it, what do they call it? Now they call it Kaitagwai. Yeah.
Yeah, they all had names. But the people who discovered it, they said, who discovered? You can't discover anything that's not lost. So they never discovered anything. They just came and
They try to name everything.
yeah. They said that I'm reading a book. History says that Spanish people came and they killed a lot of First Nation in Canada and U.S. Lots. They said there was a lot of people here when they first came, and they killed a lot of them in different ways too, by smallpox. You ever hear the story about where they brought blankets and they give gifts to the Indian people, and they had smallpox disease on those blankets? And that's how they killed a lot of the native people. So that was, history. It's really important that our children learn all of those because that's a true history. It's not like Columbus came over and discovered America. He never discovered anybody. There was First Nation here for thousands of years before Columbus ever got here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing because Canada's only going to be 150 years old.
Yeah.
And how old are you?
That's when they first came and started killing everybody.
So my grandma was 80, almost in her 90s when she passed away.
Yeah.
So her parents were, and then you just go back a few generations and they're way older than Canada ever was.
Oh, yes. There's a lot of our elders were here before Canada's birthday. So that goes to show us that we were always here.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Our roots go way down, hey?
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoy visiting with elders because they've seen a lot of changes over the years.
Oh, yes. Lots. Like my mother, she lived out in the bush and she used dog team for transportation years ago, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And then she was riding skidoo before she died. That was in the, 70, 80?
Yeah, 80.
She passed on in 2008, but she's from dog team to skidoos. She was riding skidoo and before she passed on, so there's a lot of change.
Yeah. And they have cell phones.
Yeah, cell phone
Cell
and all
phone
that.
come out not too long ago.
Yeah.
We always adapt, hey?
Mm-hmm.